Hey, how's it going, everybody? We're live now. How's it going, live streamers? Good? How about that epic music, huh? All right, your Ben Joravsky Show for Wednesday, what is it, March 27th, is underway. But before we get going here, we would like to thank the following unions for making the Ben Joravsky Show possible. The International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers. No, Ben, not Aerosmith.
No.
No, Local 126 and District 8. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. You got any band puns for that one?
ELO Orchestra.
Oh, there we go. Hang tight, Millennials. They're the Local 9, by the way. And the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Thank you once again to those unions for helping the Ben Joravsky Show return. And most importantly, a big thank you to our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. The Ben Joravsky Show starts now. What are you doing? It is Wednesday, March 27th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, no air drums. Legendary Chicago journalist Monroe Anderson returns. We welcome Cards Against Humanity creator Max Temkin and teacher/activist Erika Wozniak. And now your host, the man who loves snapping, Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Friends Like This Wednesday. And here's why. So I got a call the other day from an expat, Chicago and L.A., who said, "Hey, Ben, could you explain the Jussie Smollett case to me?" And I'm like, could I? Man, this is my latest obsession. So here goes, everybody. The Ben Joravsky Show's ABCs. to Jussie Smollett, starting with A. Jussie's a second-rate actor on Empire, a hit show for Fox TV. B. In late January, Jussie told a strange, twisted tale about getting mugged in the wee hours by a couple of MAGA hat-wearing thugs on Lower Wacker Drive while Jussie, was holding a Subway sandwich in one hand and his cell phone in another. C. No one believed Jussie. At least I didn't, because A. What is a MAGA hat-wearing thug doing on Lower Wacker Drive at the wee hours in the morning anyway? And B, this is like A and B within the ABCs. Jussie never dropped a sandwich.
That'd be B2.
Oh, B2, yeah. That was key, everybody. How many times I'd be talking to Dennis, go, yo, D, Jussie never dropped a sandwich. Anyway, D, now we're back to our list. The cops doubled down on their investigation. I mean, these dudes left no rock unturned, making me think E. Most of these cops were so mad at Jussie because he was making MAGA hat-looking guys look bad. Just saying. Anyway, F. In the middle of it all, State's Attorney Kim Foxx quietly announced she's recusing herself from the case for some unspecified conflict, prompting me to say, gee, there's something fishy going on here, prompting my wife to say, H, what? See, once again, folks, I was reading about the story while lying on the downstairs couch, and my wife was upstairs. She couldn't hear a word I'm saying. I'm screaming up the stairs to her. Anyway, Sure enough, the story breaks that Kim Foxx got a call from Tina Chen, who's a high-powered lawyer who used to work for Michelle Obama. And Tina Chen was calling on behalf of some unnamed Smollett relative who wanted Kim Foxx, follow me, people, who wanted State's Attorney Kim Foxx to ask Police Chief Eddie Johnson to turn the case over to the FBI because the Smolletts thought there were too many leaks coming from the police department, prompting me to yell up the stairs to my wife, Jay, what, is she Donald Trump? See, Trump being the other guy obsessed with leaks, prompting me to say, Kay, isn't it interesting that people only care about leaks when they're the ones getting leaked on? You know, that didn't really come out right. Anyway, L. Smollett's story fell apart. It turned out that he allegedly paid two other actors from Empire to stage the mugging to build up sympathy so he could get a pay raise from Fox. Interesting way of asking for a raise. Key word, by the way, in that sentence, allegedly, because Smollett denied the allegation, prompting me to tell my wife, M, yeah, right, allegedly, just like OJ. N. Everyone was outraged, myself included, because money and police time was wasted investigating Smollett's nonsensical allegations, and that's money and police time that should have been spent looking into real crimes. And then, oh, boom, yesterday, the state's attorney's office announced that they're dropping their case, allowing Smollett to get off with what amounts to a $10,000 fine, which doesn't even cover a fraction of all the time and money the city spent investigating his nonsensical claims, prompting Jussie Smollett to proclaim, P, I've been exonerated, which is exactly what Trump said about the Mueller report. You know, I'm starting to think that the word exoneration doesn't quite mean what it used to mean. Anyway, Chicagoans everywhere are saying, Q, the fix is in. Say this for Chicagoans. They may not be that smart to understand how they're getting fleeced by Mayor Rahm's TIF programs, but they are smart enough to know when the fix is in, as in everyone asking did Kim Foxx promise Tina Chen something we don't know about?
Was that a pirate?
Or as Rahm Emanuel put it, this is a whitewash of justice, leading me to say, S, oh my God, Rahm, you think this is unjust? Let me tell you about Lincoln Yards. Follow me, Rahm. That's where Chicago's mayor is taking $1.3 billion from the schools and other good things that we want to spend the money on and giving it to well-connected developers to develop upscale housing and gentrifying North Side communities. Oh, wait a minute. You're the mayor giving the developer the $1.3 billion. Never mind. Anyway, that pretty much sums things up. But you know, folks, the saddest part in all this, Jussie Smollett has made a mockery of real victims of hate crimes, and Kim Foxx has made a mockery of alternative sentences for petty crimes. With friends like this, liberals, who needs Trump? We got a great show today, everybody. We got Monroe Anderson coming in to talk Trump, and Trump. right? Also, a little Jussie Smollett from Monroe. Monroe's been around the block a few times. He knows a good story when he sees it. Max Temkin from Cards Against Humanity. We here at 2 o'clock. We talk about the poll he had conducted just a couple days ago about the reaction of Chicagoans to life in Chicago on the eve of this mayoral election. Pretty interesting stuff in that poll. And a good friend of this show, the great Erika Wozniak, a public school teacher who took time off to run for alderwoman in the 46th Ward. She fell short, but she'll be talking about the ups and downs of being a woman running for office in city of Chicago in 2019. So it's always fun to talk politics with Erika, and that's what we're going to be doing today, folks, talking politics, 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 and politics. But before we do any of that, the doctor has the news.
Guys, you know we're talking about politics today, right?
Oh, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah. You're cracking me up today, Joravsky. All right, it's the middle of the day. Let's find out what's happening nationally this afternoon. And no major updates really on President Donald Trump and the Department of Justice attempting to gut health care as we know it. On Tuesday, Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar, or Azar, who knows, and our newest villain in D.C. these days, Attorney General Bill Barr, along with the Justice Department, argued that Obamacare and its provision protecting people with pre-existing conditions and stipulation that people under 26 can stay on their parents' plans, it should be thrown out. Oh, by the way, the guy's name's Bill Barr, not Bill Maher or Bill Burr. Bill Barr. Bill Barr.
Bill Burr, is that you love Bill Burr, right?
No,
Isn't
Bill
that the
Burr's
comedian?
Oh yeah, Bill Burr's great.
The guy's always yelling.
Oh yeah, he's awesome. Boston comedian. Yeah. As we mentioned yesterday, along with Donald Trump's nanny nanny boo boo no collusion tour, this attack on Obamacare is for sure a strategic move from our president heading into his re-election campaign. By the way, go Team Blue so far. During a closed-door House Democratic caucus meeting, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi talked about strengthening the health care law, according to an aide in the room. And Pelosi urged House Democrats to remain focused on their agenda of pushing for lower health care costs along with policy priorities. Here's Nancy Pelosi.
This is actually an opportunity for us to speak to the American people with clarity. They say one thing and they do another. Protecting and strengthening health care is why Democrats are here on day one.
Now, Ben Joravsky, what are the chances that this could backfire on old Donnie Trump and the fight to save Obamacare could actually help unite the Democratic Party in the 2020 election?
Well, the chances are very good that it will backfire against Donald Trump, to answer your specific question, because unlike Tony and Lori, I answer specific questions, okay? Direct question was asked to me, and I answered that question.
Runoff burn.
Now, what was the second part of the question? Oh, but let me tell you this right now. The Democrats are perfectly capable of turning this advantage into a disadvantage with their silly partisan fighting, as exemplified by what we're seeing happening in the city of Chicago in this mayor's race. That's the sounds of like two people punching each other and hitting each other.
That was good. Yeah, people got that.
You know. But yes, listen, everybody knows, big fan of Nancy Pelosi. And I know that's good enough to get...
see the poster in his room.
That's good enough to get me kicked out of a lot of far-left circles. I understand she's not popular with everybody. But she just talks common sense, and she's trying to stitch together a very diverse coalition, to put it mildly, of all kinds of different people with all kinds of different political views who are basically Democrats, capital D Democrats, including a Bernie Sanders, who is a Democrat even though he says he's not a Democrat. I'm so mixed up and confused. Anyway, and they all basically agree on one thing, that we have to have health care in this country, okay? Obamacare is not the perfect solution. I know that. But you shouldn't fight each other. You shouldn't go after other Democrats if their solution isn't as, quote-unquote, perfect as your solution. And the reality is that what Donald Trump is proposing to do right now is to destroy health care for pretty much anybody who doesn't have health care covered by their private employer. So this is a very dangerous moment for America and Americans, and the Democrats have to stay to, come on, Democrats. Can you avoid fighting for just like 1 minute? Can you just avoid just ripping your throats out? I hate them. Come on, Democrats. Dang. Sorry, dude.
Oh, hey, you left your Nancy Pelosi book on the ground there. There you go.
You know
he
what,
loves Nancy Pelosi,
I love
guys.
Nancy Pelosi. What can I tell you?
All right, in other news nationally, we have an update on our former Vice President Joe Biden, a.k.a. Grandpa Joe.
I like Grandpa, too.
And once again, no, the update is not Joe Biden is running for president. But this update could be a definite sign. Tuesday night, the former Vice President, Joe Biden, apologized for his role in the 1991 Clarence Thomas Supreme Court confirmation hearings. Biden was chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee at the time, and many have pointed that in the role he probably could have done something more. Take it away, Grandpa Joe. Well, let me grab the clip here.
All right.
Grandpa Joe, where'd he go? Oh, there he is. Grandpa Joe, go.
But she paid a terrible price. She was abused through the hearing. She was taken advantage of. Her reputation was attacked. I wish I could have done something. I opposed Clarence Thomas' nomination. I voted against him. But I also realized there was a real and perceived problem the committee faced. There were a bunch of white guys hearing this testimony in the Senate Judiciary Committee. So when Anita Hill came to testify, she faced a committee that didn't fully understand what the hell it was all about. To this day, I regret I couldn't come up with a way to get her the kind of hearing she deserved, given the courage she showed by reaching out to us. The hearing she deserved was a hearing where she was respected, where the tone of the questioning was not hostile and insulting, where the fact that she stepped forward was recognized as an act of courage in and of itself.
Joe, Grandpa Joe, get ready to run, folks. He has to deal with that one because that is a huge problem for Joe Biden. And Dia, you were just an infant in downstate Alton, Illinois, watching Arthur videos at the time when that went down.
Arthur the Anteater?
No, wasn't there Arthur? Was it an anteater?
Yeah, he's an anteater.
Oh, that was the most annoying show in the world. But anyway, you were watching Arthur videos, but I was utterly obsessed with politics and watching the Anita Hill hearings, glued to just the way I am obsessed with Jussie Smollett. Some things haven't changed. Anyway, and yes, Joe, your behavior in those hearings were horrible. Not just you. You're like the least of it. Also on that committee, if I could go take a trip down memory lane, Ted Kennedy, former Senator Ted Kennedy, who had a notorious womanizer, who, of course, drove a car off a bridge that led to the death of Mary Jo Kopechne back in 1969. The things I talk about. He was sitting right there. He was one of the senators. You couldn't even ask a question because it was so embarrassing, his mere presence. So, yeah, that was sort of a down moment, to put it mildly, in the history of Supreme Court confirmation hearings. But you know what? That's what you do. You did something wrong, you own up to it, and you move ahead. So Joe Biden, clearly to me, D, is getting ready to run for president.
All right. Will he run? Won't he run? We're going to have to find out. Oh, you left your Arthur the Anteater button. Yeah.
Was that an anteater? Arthur was an anteater?
Yeah.
Oh,
Aardvark? I don't know. Anyway.
Aardvark, maybe.
I don't know. But, of course, we'll keep you posted on these stories as today's program rolls along. I don't think we're going to update you on that Arthur thing. But, Vinny J, you ready to find out what's going on in Chicago and or Illinois this afternoon?
I was born ready.
Fantastic. I love that answer because coming up after this short little break, people, we're going to find out what else is news.
You know, I can't wait because, like I always tell you, this is the time of the day where the doctor plucks that little trick out from his little sleeve. We'll see what it is when we return.
Oh, a Nancy Pelosi lunchbox. Hey there, producer Dennis here. Thanks for finding and listening to the brand new Ben Joravsky Show. All right, so here's how this works. The Ben Joravsky Show live streams on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m. Once the show is over, you can listen to the replay on our YouTube channel, or we throw it online for you to download by 4 p.m. Where can you download the Ben Joravsky Show, you may be asking yourself? Well, you may be asking yourself a fantastic question. You can find previous Ben Joravsky shows and guest interviews through several outlets. The Chicago Sun-Times Online, chicago.suntimes.com, the Chicago Reader Online, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, pick one. Just search for The Ben Joravsky Show. J-O-R-A, V as in victory, S-K-Y. So, let's recap. Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m. Live streamed on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel. and downloadable by 4 at chicago.suntimes.com, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcast. Yes, the Ben Joravsky Show is back. We're live and downloaded. Tell your friends and enjoy the rest of the show. Commercial break over. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show.
Yes, indeed. We are back in our beautiful Reader Sun-Times studio in the West Loop of Chicago. Man, things are looking great in our studio. Oh, yeah. We have all these new buttons. You know, we like to keep buttons. And yesterday we had a visit from our good friend, Peter Jenko, and he dropped off a Bernie button. All right? So I got my Bernie. It looks like it's Bernie with a marijuana leaf. Is that what that is?
That would be a marijuana leaf.
Oh, yeah. I don't believe Bernie smokes, by the way.
Oh, no.
I'm sure he's for the legalization. Oh, 27.
I smoke 10% of the 10% that is in a bowl, and then the other 10% I leave for my friends. $27.
By the way, I have to say this. We're talking about Grandpa Joe Biden possibly running for president. Max Temkin from Cards Against Humanity will be in the studio, but he'll be joined by Kitty Kurth. I don't know if she'll be talking, but she'll be helping him get here. Kitty, a longtime good friend of the Ben Joravsky Show, political activist and strategist in the city of Chicago. I don't know if you know this, D. Huge supporter of Grandpa Joe.
All right.
So I got Max in the studio. I'm like, hey, Kitty, you think he's going to run? Yes or no? We got Kitty Kurth in the studio. Got to take advantage of it, right, D?
Oh, you got to.
All right, before we get to that, let's get to the local news with the doctor.
Absolutely. Name's Dennis. We're about to find out what's going on locally. It's time for What Else is News. And even with our 2019 runoff elections only 6 days away, it seems like everyone in the city of Chicago, and around the nation for that matter, just cannot stop talking about it. You know what I'm talking about, everybody. Everybody's talking about it.
First of all, I want to thank my family, my friends, the incredible people of Chicago, and all over the country and the world who have prayed for me, who have supported me, who've shown me so much love. No one will ever know how much that has meant to me, and I will forever be grateful.
That's right.
Oh, my God.
Jussie Smollett, or is it Juicy Smollett?
Smollett.
Jussie Smollett? I don't know.
Smollett. I believe it's French.
Jussie Smollett, we're calling him.
Jussie.
The Empire actor was arrested on 16 felony charges last month for allegedly staging a racist and homophobic attack against himself. Smollett has since denied the accusations, and yes, it was announced on Tuesday that the prosecutors in this case have dropped all 16 charges on Smollett's criminal record has been expunged. Now, we have quite a bit to unpack here, Benny J. A lot of important people are weighing in on this, including both of our Chicago mayoral candidates. But Ben Joravsky, we begin in your wheelhouse.
Oh, yeah.
Before he rides off into the sunset in less than a week. By the way, thank God. Whoa. Before he sets off into the sunset, I got to get this audio board figured out, all right? But before he fades off into the sunset.
Thank you, Chicago, for this humbling victory. All I can say, you sure know how to make a guy feel at home.
Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel expressed his disgust with the latest news on Mr. Smollett Tuesday. He, along with the police Chicago Superintendent Eddie Johnson, well, they're not happy with the prosecutor's decision to drop all 16 charges. That's right, Rahm's mad, or at least that's what he wants us to believe. They gave a press conference. You okay? Eating something there?
I'm just in agreement.
Oh, I thought you were enjoying that bagel.
Oh, yeah.
They gave a press conference on the matter. I have quite a few clips here, and we're about to play them, but we must remind everyone, all right, before we play these clips from Mayor Rahm Emanuel, all of our new listeners out there, listen up here. We must remind all of you of the golden rule when it comes to playing Rahm Emanuel audio clips on the Ben Joravsky Show, all right? And that rule is, and if you know it, sing along, remember, he's smart. And you're not.
Got it, Chicago.
For this humbling victory. All I can say, you sure know how to make a guy feel at home.
Oh, you sure know how to cook.
Here's Mayor Rahm.
One, on financial costs, this $10,000 doesn't even come close to what the city spent in resources to actually look over the camera, gather all the data, gather all information that actually brought the indictment by the grand jury on many, multiple different charges.
Okay.
That's just one.
That's one. Number one.
Here's Rahm again.
What I would call the ethical costs. And the ethical cost is you have as a person who was in the House of Representatives when we tried to pass the Shepard legislation that dealt with hate crimes, putting them on the books, that President Obama then signed into law. To then use those very laws and the principles and values behind the Matthew Shepard hate crimes legislation to self-promote your career is a cost that comes to all the individuals, gay men and women who will come forward and one day say they were a victim of a hate crime who now will be doubted, people of faith, Muslim or any other religious faith who will be a victim of hate crimes, people that of all walks of life and backgrounds, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation. Now this casts a shadow of whether they're telling the truth, and he did this all in the name of self-promotion. And he used the laws of the hate crime legislation that all of us collectively over years have put on the books to stand up to be the values that embody what we believe in. This is a whitewash of justice.
Okay. I cannot disagree with anything Mayor Rahm just said. D, he articulated it very well. Mayor Rahm, I'm going to send you a bagel from the bagel store that's across the street.
There's no butt coming here?
There's a butt coming. Oh. But somehow or other, Mayor Rahm, I don't believe that you are as truly outraged by this as you say you are. And when you speak about self-promotion, I have a feeling, to quote John Lennon. I've got a feeling deep inside.
No singing.
Whoa, yeah. Oh, sorry.
We got people downloading now. We don't want them to undownload.
Oh, yeah, man. But they're in their cars driving home at rush hour going, oh, I love the Beatles. I get it all. I get that insightful knowledge of Chicago politics. And I get those great songs from the 60s.
All right, everyone's unsubscribed.
Everybody had I can't say what they had. Anyway. Going back to Mayor Rahm, he's a master of self-promotion. So his outrage and indignation is about expressing outrage and indignation. I can't even get the words out. And promoting himself. In this case, distancing himself from any responsibility with anything to do with the dropping of charges against Jussie Smollett. And D, I'm just going to tell you it's working. I'm going to read you today's lead from the New York Times. Front page story on this. Chicago makes the front page of the New York Times.
Hey!
All right? Now, Rahm is very concerned of what the New York Times has to say about him. He's always cultivating the New York Times, sending them emails. You don't send me emails.
Is this the first time that Chicago's made the paper since Rahm's essay?
No. It's the New York Times. No, it's been Chicago's been in the New York Times since then. Most recently when Lori Lightfoot and Tony Preckwinkle emerged for the runoff. Anyway, here's the lead. In a startling about-face on Tuesday that drove a rift between Mayor Rahm Emanuel and local prosecutors, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office dropped all charges against the Empire actor Jussie Smollett. Let's go back, folks. What's in the lead? Drove a rift between Mayor Rahm Emanuel and local prosecutors. This has worked. He has been officially distanced in the New York Times for any culpability in the Jussie Smollett dropping of charges. And let me just say this. I would have loved to have seen some outrage from Rahm in the, let's say, like the Laquan McDonald video. How about that? How about this one, Mayor Rahm? Little outrage over $1.3 billion in property taxes going to gentrify an already gentrifying neighborhood. How about some outrage there, young man? Anyway, D.
All right. Well, hey, keep it going here. Rahm goes on.
Where is the accountability in the system? You cannot have, because of a person's position, one set of rules apply to them and another set of rules apply to everybody else. In another way, you're seeing this play out in the universities, where people pay extra to get their kids a special position in universities. Now you have a person, because of their position and background, who's getting treated in a way that nobody else would ever, sorry about that, don't get near, I'm doing near my sermon here, that would ever get close to this type of treatment.
I got to give him credit for that. I got to give him credit for making like poking a little fun at himself about this. I wonder. Sorry about what did he elbow somebody?
Yeah, someone got in the way.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I didn't mean to knock you out. It was Mike Flannery knocked him out. But yeah, listen, I can't argue with anything he said. You know what? I appreciate him for saying it, but come on, we all know. We all know Rahm's got an ulterior motive. That's all right, Mayor Rahm. That's okay. Promote yourself while castigating him for promoting himself.
Yeah. So Mayor Rahm is a little flustered today with the charges dropped on one Jussie Smollett. Mayor Rahm was then invited to do his favorite thing ever, which, by the way, is appear on television shows that are located anywhere besides Chicago. WTTW's Paris Schutz knows what I'm talking about. He was asked to join the one and only Wolfie B. Wolf Blitzer on CNN. You know, CNN, one of several television stations with Rahm Emanuel's political pundit resume on file. CNN, yeah. But it really was a lot of the same stuff you heard in the previous clips there, except for this moment that I had to play for you, Ben. It's a little moment between Mayor Rahm and Wolf Blitzer. Let's go ahead and hear that.
Wolf, I want to ask you a question. Yeah. You and I are both Jewish. If on your front door there was a swastika or mine, and it found out weeks later, after all the empathy, that either you or I had put that swastika on our door, we would get off with 2 days of service at the Anti-Defamation League? Really? That's what would happen here?
So why do you think the Cook County prosecutor then went ahead and dropped these charges?
I cannot answer that question. The state's attorney, the head of the state's attorney, has recused herself. I cannot answer the question for what the office
did. They consult
did.
with? Did they inform you in advance that this was about to happen? Because all of us know what's been going on over these past several weeks.
No.
Wolf Blitzer. Look, guys, let me tell you something. Wolf Blitzer's great entertainer. Love Wolf Blitzer on. He's going on. Okay. When I'm in an airport, I don't really see cable TV. But when I'm in an airport and I'm sitting there waiting for the plane, I see Wolf Blitzer. Okay.
That's a great Wolf Blitzer impression. Sure, he'd love that.
And every now and then, like, you're watching a movie and they want you to think that, like, what's happening in the movie is real life. So they'll bring in Wolf Blitzer and they'll interview the guy in the movie.
Great.
But never, ever, ever bring in an outside reporter to ask somebody from Chicago about what's going on in Chicago, because you don't know about Chicago. Does that make sense? Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Oh, the New York Times. Let's interview Rahm about...
Oh, the pizza's great, right?
You love the pizza. Well, they have deep dish pizza in Chicago. Dibs. That's where people put chairs in front of it. And on the north side, they like the Cubs. But interesting enough, Dennis, on the south side, they like the White Sox. All right, guys, let me just break it down for you. The state's attorney that Rahm alluded to when he was talking to Wolf Blitzer is Kim Foxx. Kim Foxx really irritated Rahm. And part of the payback is that Rahm is getting back. You know what human nature, man. To quote Michael Jackson, da 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 da. The song "Human Nature." Anyway, that's human nature. It's
gutsy move quoting Michael Jackson these days. By the way, he's got guts, people.
Michael Jackson's about as popular as Jussie Smollett in the city of Chicago. Anyway, Kim Foxx, of course, was the attorney who defeated Anita Alvarez, largely on the basis of a backlash against the state's attorney for the handling of the Laquan McDonald shooting. And the accusation throughout the city of Chicago was that Anita Alvarez didn't do nearly enough to investigate and prosecute Jason Van Dyke, who was the cop that shot Laquan McDonald. That outrage was also generated at Rahm Emanuel and Gary Big Mac McCarthy, who was the police chief of that. I'm bringing back ancient history, folks. It was only 2 years ago. And so there was activists would say after Alvarez, first McCarthy was fired, then Alvarez was defeated by Kim Foxx, and then it was like, we got Rahm, that's it, we're going to get Rahm, and then Rahm dropped out. So as a result, you could say there were 3 people paid for it with their careers for what happened for the shooting of Laquan McDonald. Rahm hasn't forgotten that, folks. You know that. It's like in the back. Oh, Kim Foxx, you think you're so pure, huh? You think you're like white-driven snow. I'll show you. I'm mad. How could you do this? She recused herself. So I would have liked, Wolf Blitzer to say, Rahm, is this a little payback? is this little like Payback Wednesday? We're calling this Payback Wednesday, and here's why. And then Rahm would have said, I am outraged that you would suggest such a thing. I am outraged that you would suggest, and I would even be remotely guilty of payback, and as opposed to just believing that justice should be served. So anyway, that's my interpretation of Rahm's participation on the Wolf Blitzer Show.
So there you are. Just like that, you're now in the know of what is going on in Chicago.
Thank you, Chicago, for this humbling victory. All I can say, you sure know how to make a guy feel at home.
By the way, where the hell's our 2:30 guest, Monroe Anderson?
1:30.
Oh, 1:30 guest. Where's he at?
I don't know. I'm sure he's on his way.
Oh, Lord.
Well, anyway, we're going to take a brief break.
And now you'll have an answer the next time someone asks you, hey, what else is news?
Let me tell you something.
Tell me.
Something that Mike Flannery, who will be coming up on the show shortly, I think. Is that correct, D? He'll be coming up, a little Mike Flannery stuff.
Oh, yeah, Mike Flannery gets it.
Yeah.
This is actually an opportunity for us to speak to.
Something that Mike Flannery agrees. Something that Ned Flanders agrees with. Oh, boy. Ned Flanders, from one of your favorite characters from The Simpsons. And something that Ned Peabody, a kid I went to high school, all agree. You did a great job. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. We'll be right back.
If you would like to advertise with the Ben Joravsky Show, and who wouldn't, contact Tracy Baim at publisher@chicagoreadercorp.com. We have several advertising options for your business or organization, and quite frankly, we would love nothing more than to tell our listeners all about it. Once again, that's Tracy Baim at publisher@chicagoreadercorp, that's CORP as in Paul.com, to advertise with the Ben Joravsky Show, the Chicago Reader, and the Chicago Sun-Times. We look forward to plugging you. Okay, well, that came out kind of weird. More of the Ben Joravsky Show live and downloaded in moments. Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you by the Chicago Sun-Times. For the latest in Chicago and Illinois news, sports, weather, and the latest in national news from a real Chicago frame of mind and real Chicago writers, check out the Chicago Sun-Times. Read the daily paper or online at chicago.suntimes.com. And hey, if you have a little extra cash, subscribe. And by the Chicago Reader. For a deeper dive in the daily Chicago news and for all of what's going on in this city, you gotta read the Reader. Music, arts and culture, film, extensive event calendars, concert listings, and more, including weekly political columns from writers like Maya Dukmasova and, yes, our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader is free in newsstands and at chicagoreader.com. That's chicagoreader.com. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Benny J, take it away.
All right, Will, to our 1:30 guest, Monroe Anderson, just informed me that he got caught in traffic. How about that?
That'll happen. That'll happen.
Traffic will happen. Yeah, that's what happens when you don't pay to fix the street lights and the potholes. I turn everything into a political conversation, Dion. Anyway, he is on his way. He'll be here real soon. He's just parking his car. So, D, you're going to have to run out the door.
Several hats here. Still here on the Ben Joravsky Show.
Ben Joravsky Show. Yes, indeed. Several hats. D, didn't you have a little clip that you were going to play regarding the last night's debate?
I have several clips. You want to talk about the debate last night?
Absolutely. While we're waiting for Monroe, let's talk about the debate.
All right, absolutely. Let's do it. Now, one of the big issues that came up during last night's debate, Fox 32, by the way, the last debate that these two candidates are going to have, thank God.
Is that right? Was that the last
I believe
one?
It's the final one between Tony Preckwinkle and Lori Lightfoot, the televised debate, I believe.
Yeah.
So
I think, yeah, you're right. I think there's still a couple more forums, including one that Maya is participating in.
Yeah, I remember she mentioned that. But as far as televised debates, I believe that's the last one. Well, Mike Flannery was the moderator of this debate here, and just like how the city can't stop talking about it, well, Flannery couldn't stop talking about it either. The big subject here of last night's debate, yeah, you guessed it, Jussie Smollett. So we have clips from last night's debate. Let me go ahead and grab those. All right, the first one here. And finally, for once, a debate here started with Lori Lightfoot. They usually start with Tony Preckwinkle. So we're going to go ahead and start it here. Here is Lori Lightfoot on Jussie Smollett.
Lori Lightfoot, should Chicagoans be embarrassed by the Jussie Smollett case and its outcome today?
Well, I don't think we need to know enough yet to be able to answer any questions, but it certainly raises a lot of questions. Obviously, a significant amount of police resources were spent both in following up on the allegation of a hate crime and then the subsequent investigation that led to the charges. I have a lot of questions as to why these charges were dismissed. From what I understand, there wasn't a fulsome explanation of that, and I think the public deserves to hear it. I also want to know what the terms were of that dismissal. I worry, of course, about any potential liability, i.e., can Smollett now come back and sue the police, particularly because his public comments and those of his lawyers were no acceptance of responsibility whatsoever for the underlying allegations. So I think we need to know a lot more, but I'm concerned with what we know so far.
All right. First of all, I've been mispronouncing his name, Smollett. I thought
Who
it was
knows?
It's like Tony Dorsett and Dorsett. Remember that? Tony Dorsett used to play for the Dallas Cowboys. Anyway, once again, the first part of the question. See, I got this thing, D. When someone asks me a question, I feel this compulsion to directly answer the question. That's why one of the many reasons, the list would be like over 100 reasons why I could never go into politics, because you just get in nothing but trouble. Yeah. That, and of course, all the things I've written and said over the years would be immediately turned into a attack at Ben Joravsky said, blah, blah. And people go, oh my God, I kind of like a guy like that. Anyway, but so the question was, should Chicago be embarrassed? And then she didn't just, that's like an instinct that politicians have. They just, I don't want to deal with that part of the question, so I'll just go somewhere else. I'll answer it a little differently. And yeah, we should be embarrassed. The whole thing is freaking embarrassing. It just exposes so much about how Chicago operates. Everything about it exposes so much different things. The politicization of everything in the city of Chicago. The fact that Smollett has a relative who's since unnamed, who feels compelled to call Tina Chen, a prominent lawyer, who feels like she can just text the state's attorney and say, hey, can you move this case? That in itself is embarrassing. I mean, aren't we supposed to have some kind of distance between our investigators and the people that they're investigating, the cases they're investigating? And then the way Kim Foxx just said, sure, I'm going to raise that subject with Eddie Johnson, like totally undercutting the police. Yeah, the whole thing is embarrassing. We should be embarrassed. It makes us look bad. It kind of confirms everything that anybody thinks about the city of Chicago. That's how I would answer the question, folks, which is why I would never, ever, ever make it that far in Chicago. You can imagine someone in Chicago saying that, you know what I mean, as a response to a question. Flannery would rip me a shreds in the next one.
Once again, we're playing last night's clips from last night's debate at Fox 32 between Tony Preckwinkle and Lori Lightfoot, a mayoral runoff, the final televised debate from Fox 32. Mike Flannery was the moderator here. And Ben, I think we can go have a beer with old Mike Flannery. I think we get along just fine, because he brings up something that we always talk about here on the show. Basically, Mike Flannery gets it, all right?
Tony Preckwinkle, in a series of these forums and debates I've counted, some of your questioners have had to ask 4 or 5 times.
Yeah! You gotta ask like 4 or 5 times!
Who does Flannery sound like?
I don't know.
It sounds like someone. I don't know who it is. By the way, we got to get Mike Flannery in here. He told me he would come on the show, but he is a bulldog.
Tony Preckwinkle, in a series of these forums and debates I've counted, some of your questioners have had to ask 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, now, I agree with him, and I've been there with Tony Preckwinkle over the years. Tony Preckwinkle is a very frustrating person to have to interview. Now, I know that people out there are not going to feel sorry for a reporter trying to get an honest, straight answer from a politician, all right? But trust me when I tell you, When reporters get together and they talk about the most evasive politicians there are in the city of Chicago, Toni Preckwinkle is generally at the top of the list. She long ago mastered the art, if you can call it an art, answering a direct question with an answer that has nothing to do with the question asked, and it's just merely a stipulation or a statement of what she wanted to say. It's, by the way, quite a great thing to get through in life. Can you imagine a job interview? So, Dennis, how much experience do you have in radio? Let me tell you why I love the St. Louis Cardinals, okay? Man, Blue Brock, what a heck of a ball player. And can I tell you about Red Shane Deans over at second base?
I like basketball. All right, so here's Toni Preckwinkle talking about Jussie Smollett.
Did State's Attorney Fox and her office mishandle this case?
You know, I don't know the specifics of the State's Attorney's opinion on why they decided to drop the charges.
We didn't really get an explanation.
You know, and I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not the State's Attorney, and I think it's really important that the State's Attorney be allowed to provide a fuller explanation as time goes on. But you know, I've been concerned about equity in our criminal justice system for my entire public life, and particularly worked hard on these issues over the last 8 years.
Are you disturbed that after the grand jury found 16 counts, to have the case just disappear like this?
You know, I'm sure the State's Attorney will, at the appropriate time, respond more fully as to the reasons that her office took this action.
Wow. All right, that is Exhibit A, not really directly answering to a question. And look, here's the deal, folks. Kim Fox, who is the State's Attorney, is a protege of Toni Preckwinkle. Toni Preckwinkle, she used to work for Toni Preckwinkle. Toni Preckwinkle was instrumental in her rise through the ranks and in her election as State's Attorney back in 2018 in the crucial primary against Anita Alvarez. Was it 2008? No, 2016, excuse me. So obviously, Toni Preckwinkle is going to be a little protective of Kim Fox. And again, an honest answer, in my humble opinion, D, would be to own up to that. Now, I don't know if you get far in politics doing that, but if you just said, you know what, I've been a long-time ally of Kim Fox. I've worked with Kim Fox. She worked with me. I supported her campaign. I'm a little concerned about what went down in this particular case. I've not had an opportunity to talk to, I mean, something like that. I'm making it up as I go along. Although I have to wonder, why didn't Toni Preckwinkle call Kim Fox and say, hey, what happened here? And this goes back to when Kim Fox first recused herself, which was like early on in this case, where Kim Fox didn't come out clearly and say why she was doing it. And why that question was only answered after, I can't remember which paper, the Sun-Times, the Tribune, did a FOIA request and got text message, or excuse me, emails. Always the emails. You notice that, D? It's always the emails. The emails from Kim Fox and Jussie Smollett. I'm going to get that right. Relatives about moving the case from Chicago's jurisdiction to the FBI. So I am concerned that that's a legitimate question for Mike Flannery to ask, I should say, is why, did Toni Preckwinkle show a little more interest in this very high-profile case regarding her key ally, Kim Fox? And, what do they always say? Plausible deniability. You just want to deny that you have any role or responsibility, and you just want to separate yourself from the controversy and hope it doesn't touch you. And that's clearly what's going on with Toni Preckwinkle there.
The Smollett mania continues. By the way, this is going to be a key thing we're talking about today here. Here's Lori Lightfoot.
Lori Lightfoot.
I think that we have to have some real answers. In the time that these detectives were doing the work and really focusing like a laser beam on this case, we know we have literally thousands, if not tens of thousands, of unsolved homicides, other violent crimes, where I run into people all the time talking to me about the detectives won't call me back. I have no resolution. So I think the public has to have answers as to why these charges were dismissed, what the underlying basis was, particularly in light of the allegations that were made by the state's attorney at the time that the charges were first announced that looked like they had a very airtight case against Smollett for faking a hate crime.
Well, and at the bottom of this is this alleged faking of a hate crime, which clearly some officials believe actually did happen. What ought to be done in the wake of that?
Well, I think...
Is there something broader about hate? And we also have a police officer...
I think the real challenge here, let's face it, the LGBTQ community is the subject of harassment and hate crimes. So that's one of the reasons that there was such an such an outcry about this incident.
All right, Tony Preckwinkle making a good point there, and of course that point is undercut by the fact that it's pretty obvious that Jussie Smollett, gonna get it right, D.
You're doing good.
Yeah,
I'm doing awful.
Smollett made the whole thing up, and I'm happy to say that the great Monroe Anderson has made it into the studio.
And before we hear from Monroe, let's just play this last clip here. It's Tony Preckwinkle on Jussie Smollett.
Look, hate crimes do happen, sadly. People are fomenting hate and dissent on a regular basis, and they're trying to divide us. We had two black trans women that were killed last year. Their murders still remain unsolved. So we don't want to diminish the reality that people are still being targeted on the basis of who they are, what they believe.
Is there something larger
Well,
to
I think,
be done?
I think it's an allocation of police resources, and unfortunately, a lot of police resources went into this case. Whereas we know, I mean, we've got some real challenges around violence in our city, particularly murders and shootings. And, we have in Chicago more murders than New York and Los Angeles combined. And we're the third largest city in the country. And we have, unfortunately, very few arrests made, suspects arrested in these murders. In our nation, 63 cases out of 100, a suspect is arrested. But in the city of Chicago, it's 15 out of every 100. And what we know that means is if you're in a community in which there's a lot of violence, you know that it's unlikely that the perpetrator of that violence is ever going to be brought to justice.
All right. Listen, this is exactly why what Jussie Smollett did was so egregious. And the fact that he got away with it just compounds the egregiousness of it. That Monroe Anderson, before we get to Trump, I'm going to do some Chicago with you. You've been around this town a long time.
Yes.
And when you hear Tony Preckwinkle talk about the fact that we don't have enough detectives to investigate all the crimes that are real serious crimes, and you see how much time was spent investigating these bogus claims by Jussie Smollett, you have to, it's like, I don't know, in this case, the police are damned if they do and damned if they don't on this particular matter. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. Because he was a celebrity, they spent way too much time on this to begin with. And I'm sort of torn between, I thought they overcharged him. 16 counts. Sounded like a lot for a dumb prank. Although, of course, the ramifications are serious. You can't dismiss those.
Mm-hmm.
But you have policemen who are killing people, shooting them 16 times, that almost walk away scot-free. So the system is broken. It's not justice. We need to overhaul it from here to Washington, D.C. That's my opinion.
What do you think happened? What do you think went down? Why do you think they dropped the charges against him the way they did it?
I don't know. But my suspicion is, okay, hit show in Chicago,
mm-hmm.
bringing plenty of bucks in. Friendships have been developed between the producers and maybe the prosecutor. I don't know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was typical Chicago favoritism that happens all the time.
And do you think that Rahm's outrage that he's been professing for the last 24 hours or so is real?
Oh, yeah, because he's been embarrassed. And he's been very busy working on his legacy.
The legacy project.
Yeah, exactly. And this does not sit well in his plans.
Yeah.
He could go out as the mayor who let a TV star make a fool of his entire police force.
Yeah, so he's doing everything he can to distance himself from it. And let's not forget, as I was saying earlier, there is no love lost between Rahm Emanuel and Kim Foxx, because she, of course, represents the sort of like the personification of the uprising that had occurred, politically speaking, in the city of Chicago in the wake of the Laquan McDonald video. And Rahm himself is more or less a target of that same uprising, if you follow what I just said.
Oh, yeah, no, he is, because he sat on the information for a year, the video. He tried to keep that out. And, so this is sort of like the chickens coming home to roost. Chicago police have this code of honor that they honor. And so they're getting bad press. First of all, because it looks like a race anti-gay crime,
mm-hmm.
and then it's not. And the chief goes on national TV talking about it and outraged about it. I mean, it's an embarrassment.
Now, let me ask you this, Monroe. You've been around a long time. You know when to be skeptical of all kinds of stories you hear. When that story first emerged, I don't think we've ever talked about it. When that story first emerged about what was it, 2 in the morning, 2:30 in the morning, got mugged by the guys with the MAGA hats, and they put the rope around him, this, that, and the other thing. Did you believe it, or was there a part of Monroe Anderson?
It was a part of me that was very skeptical.
That's that Gary in him, man.
Exactly. But on the other hand, you know, it is possible in Chicago. I mean, I've been almost assaulted in my own neighborhood, so I know it can happen. But I worked in that area at WBBM TV for 13 years, so I know the area, and it's unlikely to happen, especially on a very cold day in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And so it was something that didn't sit right with me, but I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt.
And that benefit wore out about a week into the story,
Exactly.
I think it is. When as soon as I heard he didn't drop the Subway sandwich, no way, he's still out.
Well, you know, I mean, it seems to me that the guy has money. He could have paid somebody to go get his sandwich or to deliver it to him, even at that hour.
There you go. That's the Gary inside of him. You can take a kid out of Gary, Indiana. You can't take the Gary, Indiana out of the kid. Very skeptical street guy, Monroe Anderson. All right, let's put that skepticism to good work here. Moving away from Jussie Smollett and Mayor Rahm and Eddie Johnson and Kim Foxx. Let's talk about your favorite topic: Trump. Just the other day, the Mueller report was issued.
Yes.
It was not released to the public. I believe only one person has seen it. Is that correct? Attorney General Barr?
Yeah, right.
And
to our knowledge.
I'm sure some of his aides may have read it, whatever.
Trump and his people may have, well, Trump didn't read it, but his people may have read it.
All right, first of all, your take, you had predicted that Trump would be gone from office, was it the 4th of July or Labor Day? I can't remember. Independence Day.
Independence Day.
All right, and so you would be independent of Donald Trump by the 4th of July.
Yes.
Are you still sticking with that prediction?
I think I'm crawling back from that limb. If you will recall, I said I was going out on a limb.
Yes, you did. Yes. And then you were sawing it off as you went out there.
Right, exactly. Well, I think I'm going to be a tree hugger for a little while.
No more limbs for Monroe Anderson.
But I will safely say that he is a crook. He has the most corrupt administration in American history.
All right. Let's tie the two cases together.
Okay.
Who was more exonerated? Jussie Smollett by the dropping of the charges or Donald John Trump by the Mueller report?
Well, you mean the Barr report.
Oh, yes.
That's wrong terminology. We don't know what the Mueller report says.
So it should be the Barr letter. I think it's just a letter that was sent from
exactly.
Barr. Okay, the Barr.
Yeah, in fact, Colbert did a skit on it last night where it was Barr's notes, like Cliff's notes, with versions of Romeo and Juliet or something. It was hilarious.
Yeah, that is funny. Yeah, right. Let's just make it easy. Condense it. One sentence.
Right, exactly. And not true either. You know, the sentence that the summary was not necessarily true.
Yeah, well, that's why I say there's a natural comparison between Smollett and Trump, because they dropped the charges against Smollett without saying, he was innocent, and he acted as though he'd been found innocent.
Exactly. His mother would be proud of him.
My family that stayed with me, and then Trump, the letter clearly states he is not exonerated. He goes, I've been exonerated.
Exactly. No, I compare the two, and my position is they both got get out of jail free.
That's what they did, get out of jail free. So, all right. So, what do you think the Democrats should do now with this situation that they're confronted with the Mueller report, which is not really a report? I mean, well, it is a report, it just hasn't been released.
Yeah,
What's the next step?
Well, first of all, they've got to make them, and which is what they're doing, but they've got to force them to release the report, not the sanitized version, the Barr notes version. No, if it really exonerated Trump, they would have dumped the whole thing on us on a Monday, not on a Friday when you do a news dump. They would have dumped it on, with highlights. We'd have had highlights of the quote saying that no Russians anywhere, whatever, but you got this abbreviation with a nice fairy tale. No collusion. And now this is from the guy who auditioned for the job, if you remember. He wrote a 19-page, Barr.
Attorney General William Barr.
Now Attorney General.
Yeah.
He was just a lawyer at the time. This was in June. He wrote a 19-page letter saying that a president couldn't be indicted while he was in office, and on and on and on. Trump hires him for that reason.
Yeah.
And he does what Trump wants.
Which is to bury the evidence.
Yes. To whitewash it.
Rahm. Right, speaking of Rahm's words.
Right, exactly. It's a whitewash. Yeah, right, exactly.
And so, all right, so that leaves, there's two issues. There's a legal issue and a political issue.
Yeah.
Let's put.
Well, first of all, we don't know if the legal issue is as resolved. It could be.
Yeah.
Again, we'll see. It could be, but the sentence where they talk about how there was no collusion, it was edited. It was a quote from Mueller, but they had it was a small t that they bracketed and made it a capital T.
Yeah.
So some part of the sentence in the Mueller report had been dropped out.
Yeah.
And we don't know what that is.
So that would be like if I said Ben Joravsky is ... the greatest basketball player of all time.
Right.
And then if you went back and saw the not was dropped out.
Yeah,
of
right,
the sentence,
exactly. Right.
It's always, the editing is where the dirty deal goes. So okay, so that's the legal issue. Let's just put to the side the legal issue of what Trump did and what he didn't do and what the Mueller report stipulates exactly, what the evidence is, all this information that has been gathered over the course of 2 years at considerable expense and trouble.
When you compare it to the expense of Trump going to Mar-a-Lago every week, it's pennies. I mean, it was $25 million. Trump has spent $94 million of Americans' money, with security, and he even forces the Secret Service to rent the golf carts to follow him in his golf cart.
Well, I did not know that little detail.
Oh yeah, right.
So he is billing the U.S. government,
yes,
for the cost of driving the golf carts to follow him.
Yes,
and the money goes to his facility.
Yeah, to Mar-a-Lago.
I missed that detail.
Oh yeah, no, he's incredible.
You can impeach him for that one alone.
Right, exactly.
All right. So putting aside again the legal implications of what's in that report, because we don't know what's in the report. So. Politically, there's how do you think this is going to play? I've been following this one very carefully, Monroe, reading Republicans are pounding their chest.
But this is what's so wonderful about Trump. He stepped on his own message. Now he was going on and on about his being exonerated and these horrible Democrats, and they were going to investigate the FBI and see these people who plotted against him. And then, lo and behold, what does he do? He has his Justice Department sign up to kick out the Obamacare completely. And so that story has taken over.
Yeah. Well, okay. Now, we were talking about that earlier in regards to Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi's, it seems as though Nancy Pelosi's advice to the Democrats is forget about, for the moment, collusion with Russia. Forget about, for the moment, talk of impeachment. Forget about, for the moment, even the Mueller report. Let's concentrate on the issue of health care, which is a winning issue for us. And that's her message. I'm not sure the full Democratic Party will follow her on it, and I'm not sure, Monroe Anderson, that I want them to follow her on it, because I want to see what's in the Mueller report. And if you just drop it now...
Well, they're not going to drop it. What they're going to do is put it on the back burner. I mean, they will be pushing for it. They will continue, but right now, Trump handed them such a gift politically for them to deal with that they can do that. In fact, the Democrats can walk and chew gum at the same time. I've had my doubts in the past, but now I've come to be a believer that they can do those two things.
All right. So in other words, you're saying that you believe that the Democrats will continue to follow the strategy of forcing the issue of Mueller, putting aside health care. There's two separate lines of attack that they will be following. One will be the health care issue, which is a totally legitimate issue, very scary and frightening.
The Mueller report is a legitimate issue, too. After we spent all that time and energy, we need to know what exactly is in the report. You know, what Barr did is as if he got his report card. He's a seventh grader. He got his report card from his teacher, and he gives his parents an interpretation of the report card as to the actual report card. And his interpretation says, "Your son Bill Barr is an exceptional student." And he didn't skip class. He didn't cut class.
Give him an A.
Right, exactly. Right.
And so what's your sense of what's in that Mueller? Do you have any, like, just based on that sentence, it did not exonerate him? What do you think is in that report that's really particularly damaging to Donald Trump? Because they go out of their way to say it does not exonerate him.
What I think, we'll see, but I think what Mueller was doing was teeing it up for impeachment. He went the opposite of what Comey did. You know, Comey went out there and just really messed things up with well, she did this.
Wait, Comey with Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton, he messed things up. So he was overreacting the other way. So he put all the evidence. All the evidence is in there, particularly for obstruction. I mean, we've been seeing that in broad daylight, in plain sight. That Trump has been obstructing. So what he did was just put it out there. Okay, but we have Barr's interpretation where he doesn't believe that a president can do that. He doesn't believe that a president, while in office, because he's in charge, can obstruct. And his argument was that in order to obstruct justice, there has to be a crime. And since there was no collusion, then Trump couldn't be obstructing justice. Now, what's wrong with that theory is that, okay, if I burglarized your house last night, and then we're going through them trying to figure out if I did it or not, and I'm able to obstruct them so much of finding out the evidence that I'm free, then our whole legal system works worse than it does now. If you can if you can keep the evidence out of it some kind of way.
All right. So I've already asked you about what the Democrats will do. Now, how far do you think the Republicans will go to keep the public from seeing what information is in that report? Well, how far will they go to bury the Mueller report?
They will do. The Republicans have no shame, no scruples, no morals, no nothing. So they will go. They will do whatever it takes to prevent that from coming out, I think. What they're doing, what Trump is teeing up for right now is, he said that no president should be subjected to what he's been subjected to. So he's got to shift it away from him, and because he's so concerned about future presidents.
He's so worried about the Democrat who will follow him.
Right, exactly. So he's going to fight on the grounds of, well, a president needs to be protected. When these type of things, this should never happen again. And again, give us a shiny object, shift it.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is that Donald Trump may be setting himself up. Our next guest has just arrived. The traffic in the Ben Joravsky Show is just people moving in, people moving out, as the song says. Max Temkin is here, and he brought with him Kitty Kurth. I already suggested to our listeners I may ask her, but she's shaking her head. She's not here, even though I see her. No, but I just had a Joe Biden question I was going to ask her for after the show. Anyway, we'll hold off that. But before we bring Max on to talk about the poll in the state of Chicago politics, Monroe, here's the situation. As soon as that letter was released, the Barr letter that you're alluding to, Donald Trump went on a counterattack. And Donald Trump said that he wants to investigate the investigators.
Of course. Well, he's been wanting to investigate them, but now he really wants to investigate.
He really wants. But here's a problem. We could be coming into one of those Donald Trump moments where he shoots off his mouth. Remember, like, we're going to build a wall and Mexico will pay for it moment.
Yes.
If he starts investigating the investigators, it's going to be really hard, follow me what I'm about to tell you, to keep the public from seeing what it is they're investigating, and that is essentially the Mueller report. Do you follow what I just told you?
Yeah.
So the more he asks to investigate the investigators, the greater the pressure is to see what they're investigating, and that would be their report.
He opens up, but he has so many legal issues. You know, he has the Southern District of New York is really his Achilles heel, because that's where he did most of his corruption in New York before he was president. So and they are full steam. They have a RICO investigation going on. In Washington, they're looking into the Emoluments Act. Now, when I was here last week, I gave them too much credit. You know, they have the federal government in doing the investigation. As it turns out, it's 3 Republican judges, and they're a bit skeptical about whether Trump actually violated the Emoluments Act. They've voiced that through their reaction to things. Well, so that may not happen.
All right, Monroe Anderson's our guest. Max Temkin is in the studio. We're going to bring him on, take a brief break. We'll be right back. We're going to switch our conversation back to the poll that came out a couple days ago regarding the state of politics in this great city of Chicago. We'll be right back.
Hey there, producer Dennis here. Thanks for finding and listening to the brand new Ben Joravsky Show. All right, so here's how this works. The Ben Joravsky Show live streams on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m. Once the show is over, you can listen to the replay on our YouTube channel, or we throw it online for you to download by 4 p.m. Where can you download the Ben Joravsky Show, you may be asking yourself? Well, you may be asking yourself a fantastic question. You can find previous Ben Joravsky shows and guest interviews through several outlets. The Chicago Sun-Times online, chicago.suntimes.com, the Chicago Reader online, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, pick one. Just search for The Ben Joravsky Show. J-O-R-A, V as in victory, S-K-Y. So, let's recap. Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m. Live streamed on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel and downloadable by 4 at chicago.suntimes.com, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcast. Yes, the Ben Joravsky Show is back. We're live and downloaded. Tell your friends and enjoy the rest of the show. All right, hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show for your Wednesday, March 27th is just moments away. But before we go any further, we have to thank the following unions for helping make this show possible. First off, the International Association of Machinist and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 and District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Big thank you to them once again for helping make this show possible, and this wouldn't be possible without our dear friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. All right, hour number 2, let's go. Yes, it is Wednesday, March 27th, and live from the Chicago Reader Sun-Times studios on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, we welcome Cards Against Humanity creator Max Temkin and teacher/activist, the one, the only, Erika Wozniak. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist, Ben Joravsky.
Yes, indeed. Monroe Anderson is sticking around, but we brought in Max Temkin. He is, as Dennis said, the creator of Cards Against Humanity. He's also a political activist in the city of Chicago, and as such, has come up with a great poll, a very informing poll about the state of the mind of Chicago. And so, Max, first of all, welcome to our new humble digs here on the West Loop.
It's great to be here. Even better than before.
Even better than before. All right, let's quote him on that and start airing that one out. Tweet it out, man. Yes, somehow or other I've managed to survive, Max. I got hit with
They sure tried.
Yeah, they tried, man. They did what they could. Knocked me out, drove me a truck over me, but somehow or other I got up and I walked away. All right, and I have this poll right here in front of me, and I just pushed the wrong button and it went away. But
what do you want to know? I got it.
All right, you have it right in front of you. I don't know why I don't have it in front of me, but I pushed the wrong button. Anyway,
well, Ben,
here
that's
we
a
go.
little something I like to call professionalism.
Yeah, here we go. I pushed it. Here we go. Mayoral runoff election poll. All right, first of all, why did you take the poll?
So the poll is something that I've done with Melissa Harris. She used to be a business writer at the Chicago Tribune, and now she does communications and event planning and PR, and has for a lot of cool clients here in Chicago. And this is like the poll's like a service that we do for our clients. You know, political campaigns do internal polling all the time. Mm-hmm. Big companies do polls all the time. Lots of sort of powerful and elite people in Chicago do these polls. I see. We're getting some really relaxing music here. It's very, it's really chilling me out.
Yeah.
And I guess you know, this is like a service that we've both done for our clients before, and at some point we realized like, we were kind of wondering like, why don't people release these to the public? Mm-hmm. Like, there's no, you know, I don't know, there's no, it doesn't make it less useful to our clients if we release it to the public. So we started doing that, and there's a lot of media interest and a lot of curiosity, and now this one we did in partnership with Crane's Business Chicago and WTTW News.
Well, most of the attention was focused on the breakdown between those who prefer Lori Lightfoot and those who prefer Tony Preckwinkle. Obviously, that's going to be the lead. I think it was like 53% to 17%, Lori over Tony. I'm more interested in the other things you found when you did the poll that, to me, is like a little deeper dive into the psyche of Chicagoans. So let's just take a look, move away from the horse race, and talk about, first of all, the first thing, how likely are you to vote?
Ben, I'm sorry, I got to jump. I just got to say, this is what I love about your show and the work you're doing, because I've done a lot of media talking about the poll, and everyone's like, forget about all the interesting stuff you found. Who's going to win the mayor's race?
Yeah.
I love that you're like, we don't care about that. Let's get into the tips. Like,
we'll get to tips.
No,
right?
I'm just saying, this is what I love about you. This is great.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I'll get to the tips. I'm burying the Ben Joravsky lead because I will get to the tips. I give you credit for asking about a tip. I have one of my pet peeves, Max. I'm going to go on a rail here. Is that in these debates, this is the biggest program we have in the city of Chicago. I know I'm speaking about this, Max, because I've written thousands of articles on the subject. But to get a TIF question in a debate, it's like, are you kidding me? They're not sure that it's a real thing. You know what I'm saying, Mac?
Yeah.
Like, maybe hope.
You know, in general, I don't know. I'm curious what your feelings are, because I've watched a couple of these events with Lori and Tony. You know, I saw the NBC News one, and I felt like I was really. I mean, I actually like both of them personally from everything I've seen in my interactions with them. But like the sniping back and forth, like I feel like they're like not talking about the policy issues, and it was very disappointing.
I'm very disappointed as well. I was turned off almost from the get-go, and I have to say, just to be fair, I mean, Tony Preckwinkle started it the election night. She came at Lori hard, and I guess that was the strategy. They were following the Rahm strategy in 2015. I've had this conversation with Kitty Kurth many times. You try to brand your opponent before your opponent can identify themselves.
Kitty, come on the. Why aren't you on the mic?
No, Kitty, sit there. I'm gonna because I have a whole Joe Biden thing I want to ask her about. We'll get to that later. I'm gonna bring in Kitty on later. But I got you. Okay, so yes, I've been very disappointed.
Should you expect the women to act differently than men can?
The question, she said, is why should women act differently than men? All right, well, let me get to the first. And yes, you're right. Why should they? I'm just saying it wasn't even because they were women that I wanted a more elevated debate. I just expect more from elected officials in general. But I know I'm asking a lot. First poll, first question. On April 2nd will be an election in Chicago for mayor. How likely would you say you are to vote in this election? I think it's 84% say they're. I have a hard time believing that. I think this is one of those issues where people are asked, I said this yesterday, Max, I'm going to repeat the joke, that it's like, do you eat your broccoli before or after you eat your chocolate cake?
Well, we're not randomly dialing through the phone book. We're starting with people who we think are like, we're using information in public records to pick people who we think are likely voters. And then the first thing we're confirming with them, we're basically saying, we think you're pretty likely to vote. Are you going to vote?
I see.
And in this case, that tells you how good the model is that we're starting from, of we were right 84% of the time. And since this is a poll of likely voters, anyone who said they weren't going to vote, we were like, thanks for your time, and we let them go.
All right, I have to tell you this. There's a person I know, I've talked about this on the show, who says she is not going to vote in the mayor's race, that she doesn't like either candidate or doesn't feel comfortable voting for either candidate. But she will vote in the treasurer's race, and she will vote in her aldermanic runoff race. But she just cannot bring herself to vote for Tony or Lori for a whole bunch of reasons. Does that 84% calculate people like that, or does that 84% mean that they are actually just they're not going to vote at all? They're not even going to go to the polls.
I don't have an answer for you on that. I mean, the way the question is phrased, we said there will be an election in Chicago. I'm reading from the sheet here. So this is like literally the script we said to people. So we'd say, hello, my name is Max. I'm calling from IA, a national public opinion research firm. We're not selling you anything. We're conducting a survey. Just a few weeks from now, there's going to be an election in Chicago for mayor. How likely would you say you are to vote in this election? Based on that wording, I would say if you probably were like, even if you were going to go vote for, Powar or something like that for treasurer, if you weren't going to vote for mayor, at that point we might terminate the call, just based on the way, I don't know. What would you say? You'd say no. You'd probably say no, right? No, I'm not going to vote for mayor.
Yeah, I'm not going to vote for mayor. Yeah. I can't bring myself to vote for either candidate. Or that would emerge when you got to the question number 3. If the election were held today, who would you vote for, Tony or Lori? Right. And then there's the undecided. This person's not undecided. This person is flat out decided, I'm not voting for either one of these people.
I have an interesting thought about that, which is I think a lot of regular Americans think about voting that way. They think neither of these candidates appeal to me. No one has sort of said what they're going to do for me in my life. I'm not going to vote. And I think when I am on Democratic campaigns, I think Democrats have a certain entitlement sometimes where they feel like, well, that's our group, right? Black people. That's our group. Of course they're going to come out for us. And I'm always thinking in the back of my head, you have to earn those votes. They're not your people. You will earn those votes by having policies that help their lives. And I think you can learn a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of what's gone wrong nationally for the Democratic Party is this idea of entitlement to blocks and people and votes and not doing the legwork to earn that.
Well, that's definitely what went down in 2016 across the board, not just with Monroe Anderson. I talked about this all the time, not just with black voters like in Milwaukee or Detroit, etc., but white rural voters as well.
Yeah, but the thing is, the Russians were running the bots, discouraging blacks from showing up to suppress the black vote. They were running.
I agree with what you're saying now. And Max, I know we're talking Chicago, but I have to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Monroe and I have been talking about this all day today, and we've talked about it forever because we always talk Trump. Yeah. In your humble opinion, should the Democratic Party drop the issue of the Russian investigation and Russians' interference and just deal with things like healthcare and just leave it behind, or should they pursue it?
So may surprise you to know that I have very complicated feelings about this. I mean, the first thing I'm just going to say for the record here is the Russians definitely fucked with you. Can I swear on this podcast?
Yes, you not only did you just swear, but you can't. It's a podcast.
Yeah, right. Whoops, you got that 5 second? You got to dump that.
No, there's no dump button or anything. By the way, you get the blue Mustang. You're the first person to drop the F-bomb on the new Ben Joravsky Show.
Hey, there we go. Well, the Russians definitely fucked with the election. I mean, I think that's beyond. I think it's obvious, right? I think you had irregularities in the vote, and leave aside the Russians. The Republican Party they hacked the election. You saw it in Georgia. You saw it in North Carolina. We have a crisis of election integrity in this country. The people who must deal with that issue are elected officials in Congress. That's their job, right? They have political power. They sit on committees. They have a staff. That's their job to deal with. In my view, I always think about what can I do? And I'm an activist. I work on campaigns and elections. There's really nothing I can do that affects, Bob Mueller and corruption and Russia. I mean, I'm mad about it and I read about it in the news, but what am I going to do? I'm going to write an angry letter. What can I do? What I could do is I could go talk to someone about their health care. I could go talk to them about their taxes. I can talk to them about these issues that affect their lives. To me, I think we have to understand how to build a base of political power, which is to talk about programs that affect people's everyday lives. And then once we have power, we need to be smart and we need to say, we're going to clean up elections in this country. We're going to make it so the Russians can't hack into things again and, monkey with these Facebook ads and things like that. But I will say, I was at I heard this from, I don't know, who was it? It was, who's the 2012, Jim Messina, the 2012 campaign manager for Obama. And he said that he had seen some study that the average American consumes every week 4 minutes of news, which is crazy to me.
That's it?
4 minutes a week. I'm just repeating something I heard from a guy. I don't know if this is true or not.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But, for me and you, I probably consume, I consume 4 hours of news a day. I mean, I'm shooting into my veins, right? I already want to know what's going on Twitter right now, and I'm having a conversation with you.
Yeah.
But I think to the average American, I'm following this Russia stuff an inch away from it, and I'm very excited, and I think it's really scandalous and interesting. But I think most people are like, what does this have to do with my life? I don't care. What do I care? They didn't mess with me. I don't care.
Well, then there's two issues. One is the issue of using it as a tactic to get the average person to vote for a Democratic candidate, which is one issue. And then the second issue, of course, is the one that concerns me, a news junkie. I want to know what happened. I want to know when down. And that, like a Kitty Kurth or Monroe Anderson, we're obsessed with that kind of stuff.
But you know what? We're never going to get it as long as Mitch McConnell's the majority leader. That's a fact. And there's nothing we can do. We have to have a base of political power. Let me put it another way. Let's say the Mueller report becomes public right now, and in it there's a horrible indictment, the worst crimes we find out about Trump. You think anything's going to happen? There's no political will to do anything. We're not going to impeach him. Everything's going to be the same. The sun's going to come up tomorrow, and we're going to be living in the same political reality as when we went to bed the night before. That is the depressing reality of the political situation that we have now.
Even if it does say that there was, in fact, conspiracy, not collusion.
In my opinion, I think that the Republican leadership are morally bankrupt.
Yeah,
I think they do not care about this country. I think they care about preserving their own political power. And I don't think there's anything in that report. I think they have, at this point, they're in it too, right? They're co-conspirators.
Right.
They're going down with the ship. And I think as long as they're in there, as long as Mitch McConnell is the majority leader in the Senate, it sort of doesn't matter what the truth is, because we're never going to get any justice.
Well, I got to tell you this. I hear what you're saying in regards to the hardcore Republican voter. The quotes I was reading in today's paper were just hilarious. I was going to share them with Monroe, but they're buried in there somewhere, where these Trump voters throughout the country that the New York Times people interviewed were saying, we're sticking with, we knew this was a witch hunt, even though he has not officially been exonerated.
Right, exactly.
But I'm always thinking about what David Axelrod's proverbial swing voters in Maryland, and this is, of course, the Democrats' biggest problem. They just act as though they're the only voters in a race, but that the proverbial suburban swing voter in Maryland that they're always so worried about. But I got to believe, unless I'm going to lose all faith in humanity, Max, that a person who's not a card-carrying Republican would be swayed by concrete evidence that the President of the United States was obstructing justice.
I think we live in a time where it's very easy to live in your own reality. And one way to think about that, it's obvious where that happened. We can all look at the Republicans and be like, look at these nutbags over here and all the QAnon and all this crazy stuff that they believe. But let's look in the mirror for a second. How many people do you and I know who every day on Facebook do Mueller's got him and there's secret indictments and it's coming out? And guess what? It came out and there was nothing. the president. The president's not going to be impeached. Let's be honest. I mean, it's not. What's going to be in there, right? It's not going to happen. None of that stuff came to fruition. And how many people built that little, mind palace for themselves, and that was the only news they read, and they were reading all the blog posts and the conspiracies, and you can do it on either side. And I don't know, man. I still think, in terms of to separate out the truth of what happened and the need for justice. I mean, I recognize that, and I hope we get there. But on the other side of, like, how do we hold political office? Like, how do we win some fucking elections here? I think we have to have some issues that affect people's lives. And I think if you go to whatever, you're a swing voter in Maryland, and you're like, but what about, Russia and Trump and corruption? Like, I don't care. They're like, what about my taxes? What about my health care? What about my family? I think that's always why people get out of bed and vote.
Do you agree with him on that one?
Yeah, no, I don't completely agree with you. I think that, okay, the hearings are being held in the House on various Trump criminal acts and what have you, and incompetencies. Those live hearings with people talking, so it's not just, it's going to be reality TV of a sort. If enough of that comes out where the polls start shifting, and it looks like the Republicans are going to have another blue wave, and if Mitch thinks that he can throw Trump under the bus to maintain his leadership, his majority in the Senate, I think he'll do it.
You think I don't know. They're awfully afraid of Donald Trump.
No, I'm saying with the polls changing now. They won't be, if people start seeing that stuff.
I hope you're right. That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a long shot. I mean,
that is a long shot.
Exactly, but I think that's possible.
All right, now let's go back to the poll. We went on a long tangent here, but that's what happens on my show, Max. All right, would you say things in Chicago, going back to the poll, would you say things in Chicago are generally headed in the right direction, or would you say things are pretty seriously off the wrong track? And I'm trying to read that. Wrong track looks to be 50%, right? 51%, and right direction looks, by my calculation, I don't know, 30%, but I'm looking at this thing.
So it's 28 right direction, 51 wrong track.
All right, what do you make of that?
Well, Ben, I would say in my analysis, most Chicagoans feel the city's on the wrong track. It's like these sports guys, right? It's like, well, I guess what they're going to have to do is put more points on the scoreboard if they're going to win,
Yeah, 28%. Yeah, I guess, yeah.
They're going to have to move that ball down the field, Ben.
Max, I think you got a good point there. That's why we bring them on, that astute analysis.
That's why you make the big bucks,
Yeah, 28 to 50, that would say.
Yeah, but it's all about moving that ball down the field,
Well, let me rephrase the question. I guess do you think that's I guess that's the way it's always been. I'm always thinking that the city of Chicago is on the wrong track, Max. You know what I'm saying? I don't think anything has changed. And that's just me speaking.
No, I mean, how you open up the paper, and like how many stories do you see about problems in our city versus how many things do you see about these great stories about things getting fixed, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, anyway, 28 to 50. That's actually kind of low. Because I guess that falls into the category. I want to, people say it's on the right track, or like someone to say, yeah, I'm going to vote. That's a good civic thing to say. We're on the right track. All right, how closely are you following? Now, here's where we're getting to the good stuff. How closely are you following the Lincoln Yards development? That was one of the questions that you asked. And why did you? You're in sort of an exception to the rules. I said earlier, not a lot of people in the media, and when you did this, you are in the media, whether you want to be or not. Not a lot of people in the media asked this particular question.
Right.
So why did you ask it?
Well, I think I'm interested. We were just having this conversation before, right? About nationally, right? How do you win an election? What do people care about? And we're talking about, well, do people care about their tax bill? Do they care about climate? Do they care about Trump, Russia? I don't know. I mean, I have my gut, but it's nice to ask people and hear what they have to say. At least where I live up on the north side, right by that Lincoln Yards thing. And for me, I would say, from the people I talk to, that's got to be the number one issue in politics. And of course everyone's following Lincoln Yards. But what do we see about that one was only in total 46% of people are sort of following that story and have heard about it. And only 19% of Chicagoans are following that story very closely. So another 27% said they're somewhat close, and 19% said just a little. And, you know, something our pollster told us, a way to interpret this is the people who are following it very close, they're probably reading about the story, and the people who say, oh, I'm following it a little bit, like they haven't really heard of it.
Yeah, and don't know. There's a don't know in there. Using tax increment finance districts, this is near and dear to my heart. Totally following. I was actually encouraged by this, Max. Totally following is approaching 50%. I can't tell exactly from this graph. What's that, 46%?
It's like 45%, yeah.
45%
yeah,
are
so,
totally following.
Yeah, it's the same. You know, very interestingly, the TIF issue is very close to the Lincoln Yards issue, and they're really the same issue, right? Because that's sort of at the heart of it is, to me, the heart of it is there's a moral case about how we should be using taxpayer money and what rights do powerful people in the city have to the taxpayers' money. And the numbers are very similar here, probably not surprisingly. You know, it's the same. 19% of people are following those issues very closely.
Yeah, that 19% is listening to this show right now. And the don't know, God, I failed miserably. What is the don't know?
It's 4%.
Oh, it's not so
4%
bad.
have never heard of a TIF before.
Yeah, and
but again, this is of likely voters.
Yeah.
So this is only people who are going to vote in the mayoral race.
Well, Max, here's where I always say I've really failed, and I've been pursuing this issue for all these years and trying to get people to understand it. And there's many different ramifications of a TIF program in Chicago, but the two essential ones: one, it's money that should be spent on areas that really need it, and it's being spent in wealthy areas. And two, and this is a citywide thing, it's a tax hike. And all of our elected officials say they're trying to hold the line on taxes. So what the city, I have to give them credit on this, Max, is they've been very successful at concealing the fact that this is a tax hike so that they take it off the table. So people who have a knee-jerk reaction against taxes, and you get those in your poll, they don't want to see their taxes go up, don't respond that way when they hear about the TIFs. Do you follow what I'm saying? They don't see it as a tax hike.
Yeah. A new TIF is better branding than a tax hike. I agree with that.
Yeah, and even though it is a tax hike. All right, Max Temkin is in the studio. We're talking about his poll, and we're taking a deep dive on it. Erika Wozniak has entered the building as well. We're going to be talking to her about her run for alderman in the 46th Ward. We have a lot of political talk ahead of us. We'll be right back after this.
The Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you by the Chicago Sun-Times. For the latest in Chicago and Illinois news, sports, weather, and the latest in national news from a real Chicago frame of mind and real Chicago writers, check out the Chicago Sun-Times. Read the daily paper or online at chicago.suntimes.com. And hey, if you have a little extra cash, subscribe. And by the Chicago Reader. For a deeper dive in the daily Chicago news and for all of what's going on in this city, you gotta read The Reader. Music, arts and culture, film, extensive event calendars, concert listings, and more, including weekly political columns from writers like Maya Dukmasova and, yes, our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader is free in newsstands and at chicagoreader.com. That's chicagoreader.com.
Hey everybody, Ben Joravsky here. You know I like to joke around a lot, but let's get serious for the moment, and I want to tell you about the Chicagoland cremation options. When you lose a loved one whose wishes were to be cremated, Chicagoland Cremation Options provides your family a dignified and affordable cremation service. Chicagoland Cremation Options helps you bypass the expensive overhead of a funeral home or cemetery by streamlining the cremation directly, saving you sometimes thousands of dollars. Chicagoland Cremations Options Crematory, just south of O'Hare, 5 minutes west of Chicago, family owned and operated by Douglas Klein. Visit ChicagolandCremationsOptions.com. One more time, ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
Commercial break over. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show.
Ben Joravsky here. We've got people.
Ben, I don't want to step on your ad, but when you said crematorium. I thought it was like an ice cream thing, and then it really took a turn. It was more grim than I thought.
No, I started. That's why I said, everybody, I like to joke around, but now I'm getting serious.
Right.
So
I thought it was going to be some sort of tasty frozen treat.
No,
dairy related.
That is sponsor of one of our sponsors, Chicagoland Cremation Options, Douglas Klein. All right. Anyway, Erika Wozniak has joined us in the studio, and longtime listeners of the Ben Joravsky Show know that she is a public school teacher in the city of Chicago, B, one of the co-hosts of the Girl Talk, that's a monthly show at the Hideout, and C, a recent candidate for alderwoman in the 46th Ward. So welcome back, Erika.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and all right, let's talk. We're going to bring Max back into the conversation and maybe drag Kitty Kurth into this. I'm going to get a Joe Biden answer out of her. She's talking to Dodge and she doesn't want to answer it, but I'll get her to answer that question. But first, let's talk a little bit about the 46th Ward race. You finished third in how many people were running?
There were 6 of us running, including the incumbent.
And the incumbent is James Kappelman.
James Kappelman, yes.
All right, and an ally of Mayor Rahm.
Big ally of
Mayor Rahm. So what were your issues when you started off? What were the issues you thought that would elevate you to victory?
Yeah, I mean, the 46th Ward is such an interesting place, and I'm supporting the woman who got in second place. She's in the runoff right now. Her name is Marianne Lalonde. And I certainly encourage listeners to vote for Marianne Lalonde if they live in the 46th Ward. The issues in the 46th Ward were very similar to the issues across the city. We were talking about public schools, we were talking about affordable housing, and we were talking about public safety. So those are the 3 biggest issues that we saw in our race, and in talking to other candidates, that's what we see across the city.
All right. So when you announced you were running for office, you had issues on all these important topics, and now you're running for office, and you discovered, I assume, correct me if I'm wrong, that issues alone are not going to get a candidate elected alderman in the city of Chicago. There's other factors that are involved.
Yeah.
Am I correct in that assumption?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so talk about some of the other factors that were involved, some of the things you learned as a rookie running for alderman.
Certainly a rookie. That is the correct word. Well, so we had our Girl Talk show last night, and it was really empowering, and it was really probably my favorite show so far. We had Sue Sadlowski-Garza, alderwoman of the 10th Ward, alderwoman-elect Maria Haddon from the 49th Ward, and Anna Valencia. And we had this really robust conversation about the difference that a woman experiences than a man who's running for office. And our experiences in many ways mirrored each other. And that's something that I really, after the race, wanted to make sure that I had the opportunity to elevate some of the experiences that I had as a woman running. In particular, just when I first started, I've been a public figure in Chicago for some time. I've done a lot of work. I've hosted the Girl Talk, but my looks became, a big topic of conversation, how I wore my hair and my makeup, and that was something that I was really kind of like, well, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with the way that I look? And I think that's something that, women experience in a way that men certainly don't have to. And that was something that we talked about last night, where other women who are on the stage talked about that quite a bit. They each had similar experiences.
Now, when you say that it became an issue, how you looked, how you combed your hair, how you wore your makeup, what clothes you wore, et cetera, was it an issue among voters, or was it an issue among strategists or tacticians that you brought in who said, look, kid, you want to be elected alderman, you got to get rid of that hairdo, you got to get a new makeup thing? I mean, was it the tacticians or the voters?
Yeah, so I think it was in response to what we thought the voters would respond to.
So as tacticians?
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, yes, but also those folks were doing, they were telling me what they thought was going to resonate best with voters. Mm-hmm. And, me wearing my bright red lipstick, which I love so dearly, wasn't necessarily something that, they felt voters would respond to, as well as, wearing a more muted color, which it is perfectly fine. I mean, that's something that, you change your looks, but it was something that I really struggled with.
I'm struggling with it right now. Help me out, Erika. And, okay, why would... I've never run for office. I've never worn lipstick, and I've never advised an aldermanic candidate, so I'm at a loss here. Why would it make a difference to a voter in the city of Chicago if you had bright red lipstick or muted red lipstick?
You know, I'm not sure if it does or not. I just think it's something that we really looked at. That, you know, I'm a tall blonde woman who likes to wear bright red lipstick and, you know, colorful dresses, and, you know, that's part of who I am. And so I think it was something that, you know, toning it down a little bit was something that we discussed quite a bit, and to the point that, you know, I wore my glasses and I put my hair up, and, you know, but I continued to be myself and stay true to the issues. But it was something that, you know, listening to other women who were running for office last night, it meant so much to me knowing that they had gone through the same thing.
Yeah, that's totally bogus in my humble opinion. In fact, if I were in the room, this is why they keep me out of such rooms when these tactical decisions are made. I would say, in my humble opinion, that if you're in what'd you say, there were 5 people running or 6 people running?
There were 5 challengers, 1 incumbent.
All right, so you got 6 people running against it, and your only goal, you know, you're not going to win outright, Erika. You're going to get to that runoff. And I would say the red lipstick is what's going to get me to the runoff, because people are going to go, I'm going to vote for that lady with the red lipstick.
Yeah, and I think that's something that you have to balance. I mean, do you lean into it, or do you kind of take a step away from it? It's, you know, it's part of how I feel comfortable. It's part of how I feel powerful.
Yeah.
And so that's, you know, it was something that we, you know, we talked about quite a bit, and now that I'm sort of out of it, yesterday I went to the makeup store and said, give me the darkest red lipstick you have.
I want that red stuff. Wait, now, hold on. Now, all right, I want to dwell on the red lipstick, but it is important, because we're talking about we're talking about the mentality of Chicago voters with Max before you got here, and this is elemental. Lipstick matters. Did you ultimately bow to the wisdom of the tacticians and mute your red lipstick?
So I did, and then I didn't. So once I sort of went into, you know, wearing, you know, the more muted color and putting my hair up, which I feel comfortable with my hair up. That wasn't an issue. But I just got to the point where I was like, what am I doing? Just be yourself, you know? So I'm not wearing mini skirts and, you know, go-go boots.
Yeah.
I decided to just go back into being myself, and I felt so much more comfortable and so much more confident, and that really meant a lot to me. And again, going back to last night's girl talk, just knowing that other women had gone through this, and you don't always talk about it because it's something that makes you look weak or vulnerable. And so, you know, talking about your looks, you don't even want to sometimes acknowledge your looks on the campaign trail. And so that's something that, you know, I felt really strongly about, you know, sharing that was something that I experienced.
You know, I had a long conversation with a mutual friend of ours, Joanna Klonsky, a while back. This is during the gubernatorial election, and Joanna I wonder if that was an off-the-record conversation. I now revealed Kitty Kurth. Anyway, Joanna said to me, she look at his picture of J.B. Pritzker, and Pritzker was in a parade, and his belly was out, and he was looking real schlumpy. No woman could go out in public and look like that. And I don't know. I mean, what if a woman tried to do that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What if a woman just said, I'm going to exercise my inner J.B. Pritzker? Uh-oh, Kitty Kurth feels compelled to say something.
Carol Moseley Braun has always said that throughout her political career, which is decades long, it's always been way harder to be a woman than to be a person of color. And she was on my podcast recently, Girl Pundits, talking about how internationally, all the different places internationally that she had been with women in public office, and all the places that women in public office are put down in ways that men don't even think about, but how hard it is to be a woman running for office.
Yeah, and you experienced that same as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there was certainly, you know, I remember talking to another woman aldermanic candidate, and she said to me, I just can't wait to wear jeans again, which was such such a small thing, but I would be at these forums with the 2 other male candidates, and they always came in jeans. I could have never gotten away with wearing a pair of jeans at a forum.
Well, let me ask you, have things changed?
I think that Erika clearly has the wrong tacticians. If they're telling her to be, if anybody tells a candidate to be somebody other than themselves. Yes, should your hair be clean? Should your jeans be clean? Yes, but you should campaign however you feel the most comfortable, because the more comfortable you feel, the more that you're going to focus on what you're saying and not how you're saying it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the people who I was working with are some of the most talented folks in Chicago. And, you know, I obviously was listening to them because I knew that how talented they were. And it was a different sort of situation where you sort of have to get over those roadblocks of you know, being criticized for your looks. And I know I know a story of one of the other people who was running, not that I won't name names, but that they said Erika puts on her glasses when she wants to be taken seriously. And
Wait, time out. Another candidate opponent said that about you at an open forum?
Yes, it wasn't a woman.
It was not a woman.
It was not a woman, but another candidate did say to a volunteer, well,
okay.
Yeah, Erika likes to put on her glasses when she wants to be taken seriously. Well, I'm being taken seriously because I have a body of work of over 15 years, and I've been a public school teacher, and I'm a candidate for alderman. That's why I'm going to be taken seriously, not because of my glasses. So.
Wow, what a trip. All right, so let's get away from the way you look, although this is actually an important point, eye-opening. I don't know what tacticians tell people. I'm really disturbed by the state of tacticians in the state of Illinois, city of Chicago, because that's some bad advice in my humble opinion. All right, now, let's talk about the issue. You said you want to run an issue-oriented candidacy campaign. I happen to know a little bit about the ward you're running. We're in the 46th ward, and this is fascinating. This gets back to stuff to talk with Max. You have James Kappelman. He's a longtime ally of Mayor Rahm. He had put together a TIF deal at Montrose and Clare, and it was an absolute ridiculous deal. Talk about gilding the lily, et cetera, et cetera. He felt compelled. He felt compelled to run in that election as though he were a pro-affordable housing activist. And then he got positioned in one of these, bizarre Zelig moments in the city of Chicago where Danny Solis is taking a fall because he's wearing a wire, and he's suddenly the chair. Kappelman is the chair of the zoning hearing on Lincoln Yards. You talk about that with Max. You're talking millions and millions of dollars. It's going to go effectively against the whole notion of affordable housing.
Well, it's that they don't have any affordable housing. They're paying some fee to not have affordable housing. We're not even pretending that Lincoln Yards is going to be anything other than this like dystopian, inward-facing playground for rich people in corporate headquarters.
Absolutely true, and that was the same point, that they're paying money into a fund to avoid building public housing, Erika, that was at play with that Clarendon Montrose TIF deal that Kappelman sponsored. Here's my question to you. How do we, the people of the city of Chicago, time after time, allow these elected officials to get away with claiming they're doing A when they're actually doing the opposite of A?
I have no idea. And we keep on electing these folks who are doing this. So that's why I'm so excited for April 2nd, because we have to hold everybody's feet to the fire. Obviously, James Kappelman is in a runoff right now with Marianne Lalonde, and he did not get 56% of the votes in the 46th ward. That's a huge chunk of votes that he didn't get. And so we have to make sure that we're electing folks who aren't going to do that. I mean, the fact that we have Alderman of the 32nd Ward, Scott Wagasback, he's coming out in front of saying this is a misuse of tax dollars. And it's a gross misuse of tax dollars, just like the Clarendon TIF was, just like the DePaul Arena was. We continuously are giving our taxpayer dollars to folks who don't need it while our schools are crumbling. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
I'll just throw in my 2 cents here, because I've been, I live right by this. I've been following the Lincoln Yards issue very closely, and I think when you elect someone, I think James has done a lot of great things for the city. At times he's been a very progressive alderman for the city, but when you want to see someone's character, it doesn't matter what they do when it's free and easy. It matters when the decision is really difficult and their back is up the wall. Their back is on the wall. Whose side do they take, right? Do they do the easy thing and do they cave into the powerful elites in the city who put pressure on them? Or do they take a principled stand for the people? And I think that it just couldn't be a clearer illustration to me of the way that business is done in this city, that zoning meeting proceeded, even though we had just had this reform election. The two candidates that made it onto the ballot didn't want to have this meeting, didn't want the zoning to happen. Everyone wants to slow this thing down. The voters could not have spoken more clearly. And somehow Kappelman holds this hearing. The mayor's office steamrolls everyone. And you have this very theatrical hearing. But, obviously the moment they gavelled into session, it was done. So, I think that those are the moments I hope voters watch. And we can see very clearly when our elected officials do us dirty like that.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Max, because the poll that we were talking about that Max commissioned about last week about Chicagoans, and people are being very civic-minded when they answer the questions, want to say, yes, I follow the issues, yes, I'm going to vote, et cetera, Erika. But then, as Max is pointing out, we had this carnival hearing, which was so obviously staged, where James Kappelman, who is running in a contentious race and has to pretend as though he's for affordable housing, says, I want to defer. He's the chairman. He should get to defer the freaking thing. And what was it, Walter Burnett? Or I can't remember which one.
Ben, do you watch professional wrestling at all? Is anyone like a wrestling person?
That man right there.
Do you know? Do you have a mic over there?
Yeah.
Tell us what kayfabe is. What is kayfabe?
Kayfabe is like talking in like wrestling terms. Like if Hulk Hogan were in here right now and he was like, "Brother, I'm going to take you down."
But kayfabe, but it's more. Kayfabe is the fiction. It's this fabric that goes. Oh, it's the fiction of the reality of wrestling, right? It's this fabric that goes over the whole thing, and you keep kayfabe at all times, and you pretend that wrestling is real, even when you're doing interviews or whatever. So when Hulk Hogan is speaking in that voice, he's keeping kayfabe because he's in the character, right? This is the kayfabe of Chicago politics. It's the fiction. It's the little drama that we play out in city council where it's Alderman, I have a motion, and it's fucking done. It's done. The deal was made behind closed doors. This is a little show for the people. And, in this case, like, I was naive enough to think, oh, maybe we'll have like a hearing here and a debate and an equitable decision. And no, it was so obvious that this thing was decided before anyone walked in the doors.
Next question in the next poll. You voter, do you think there's anything legit about Chicago politics? Yes or no? Let's see if the yes is that way. All right, Erika, so my question to you ran in the 46th ward. In the midst of all this, did voters in the 46 wards actually fall for the wrestling rhetoric that Max and Dennis were talking about? Do you think they actually believed the game that went down in city council?
I think the folks who were already, with Kappelman believed it. I think the folks who understood, the theatrics of it did not. They knew that it was a dog and pony show. And I mean, that whole city council meeting was just so horrifying. Just as a voter, as a public servant, I was just so disappointed in the theatrics of it. It seemed just so phony.
All right, that's Erika Wozniak. Up with me in the studio as well is Mac Temkin. We'll be right back after this.
If you would like to advertise with the Ben Joravsky Show, and who wouldn't, contact Tracy Boehm at publisher@chicagoreadercorp.com. We have several advertising options for your business or organization, and quite frankly, we would love nothing more than to tell our listeners all about it. Once again, that's Tracy Boehm at publisher@chicagoreadercorp, that's CORP as in Paul.com, to advertise with the Ben Joravsky Show, the Chicago Reader, and the Chicago Sun-Times. We look forward to plugging you. Okay, well, that came out kind of weird. More of the Ben Joravsky Show live and downloaded in moments. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Mr. Joravsky, man, take us home.
All right, that's Erika Wozniak on the piano. Man, the woman teaches. She wears ruby red lipstick. She hosts a girl talk. She ran for alderwoman, and she plays a mean piano. All right, that means we're coming to the end of
good.
She can do it all, man.
Like Elton James.
By the way, there's an Elton John movie coming out soon. I'll be the only one in Chicago. Who cares? Oh, Erika. What? Are you like Elton John? Okay, it's a generational thing. Have you seen Us? Yes or no?
No.
Oh, have you seen it?
It's way too scary for me. I'm not going to see it.
Oh, man, it's awesome. I'm trying to find anybody who's seen it. All right. So that beautiful music means we're at the end of a show, but I have a couple questions. A little, one of the good things about podcasts, you go over time a little bit. Nobody's really watching. Nobody's paying attention anyway to whether you go over time or not. I got Kitty Kurth here as well. I'm going to ask her a Joe Biden question, but Dee, why don't you play up that Bobby Rush clip? I've been asking pretty much everybody who comes through the studio. We talked a lot about this yesterday with Rod Joy was in the studio, and Anthony Clark was in the studio as well. Nice. Bobby Rush's attitudes about people who vote for Lori Lightfoot.
All right, well, hang tight here. I got so I have Bobby Rush, the quote from Bobby Rush, and then I have the responses from the candidates. So let me go ahead and pull up the Bobby Rush clip first, and here is Robert Bob Rush.
Everybody who votes for Lori, the blood of the next young black man or black woman who's killed by the police is on your hands.
All right, that's Bobby Rush. So we're going to start with that. Your thoughts? I'm just going to go to you, Erika. Your thoughts when you hear that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot. That's a huge statement, and I think he took it too far.
Max?
I would say I think real police reform is got to be one of the most urgent issues on the city, and I think Tony's probably closer to my. I think Tony would get. I think on that issue, she probably has the stronger portfolio to sort of tackle that issue. But I also think nothing is going to change in the city, including police reform, with this current culture of corruption. And for me, I'm always thinking about we've got to change the way we do business in the city, or else we're never going to have a real debate about this stuff. The people are never going to have the power to affect any of this. And so I don't know. I have mixed feelings. I feel like I certainly don't think I could defend Lori's career and her history with Chicago police, but I do think she has the potential to bring the reforms we need to the city to change this issue.
And when you talk about the culture of corruption in the city of Chicago, what would be at the top of the list that has to change?
What would be at the top of the list? Well, I mean, where to even start? I mean, the pay to play and the outright bribery of public officials. I mean, I think has got to be up there. Lori said she's interested in re-examining aldermanic prerogative in city council, which I'd love to. I mean, I know everyone freaks out when we talk about that, but what does it look like not to do? It's not working. So what else do we have? Let's figure something out.
What would you put at the top of the political corruption in Chicago?
I mean, I think we start with campaign finance reform because that's where a lot of the pay to play comes in, and I think that it trickles down from there.
And how you just got off a campaign?
I did.
What was campaigning? What was raising money like?
Oh, it's the worst part. I mean, ask any candidate. It's really hard. I spent 20 hours a week on the phones raising money, and I was lucky. I had institutional support with some of the large labor unions. But if you're not a rich person who has access to rich people, it's really difficult to raise money on a campaign, and a $25 contribution goes a really long way.
Yes. I'll just throw out really quickly, New York did publicly financed elections, and it's really cleaned up their municipal politics, and it's given an opportunity to many people like Erika to run for office, new young people who aren't already corrupted by the system to get into politics and get elected. Chicago, we had a ballot initiative a few years ago, and something like 70% of voters wanted to see publicly financed elections. I've never understood why we didn't. Well, of course I understand why. But we don't have the political courage in this city to change that.
Max, just the ballot initiative, what a joke in the city. You talk about things that are part of the political corruption. This little spasm every now and then where we throw to the vote, hey, what do you think about X, Y, Z?
Ben,
and then we're going to ignore it.
I worked on that, and I'll give you a little bit of the gossip on that, all right? I hope I'm not I hope I'm not. No one listens to this anyway. It'll be fine.
I hope you're wrong on that point. I hope you're wrong about that.
I hope I'm not blowing anyone up here. But yeah, I worked on that with Common Cause Illinois on that ballot initiative. And the way that it went down was, constitutionally, we're only allowed to have two or three initiatives. Three ballot initiatives, right. And there was a big movement that year to have a ballot initiative on a publicly elected school board. And Mayor Rahm's office was like, we absolutely cannot have a ballot initiative on a publicly elected school board. So they were like, get me anything that's not a publicly elected school board. Yeah. And I was working with Common Cause, and we were like, how about publicly financed elections? And they were like, we love it.
Wow.
And I think that's how it came to be.
Dang.
Yeah.
That is so cynical, Chicago politics. Go ahead.
Can we go back to Bobby Rush for a minute?
Go ahead.
Bobby Rush is 72 years old.
Uh-huh.
I've only known him since 1983 or 84 when he was an alderman, and then I knew him. I worked at the DCCC when he was first elected to Congress, and he's done many good things along the way. But he is now eligible for many good public pensions, and he's 72 years old. And I would say this if he was here, and I say it with love in my heart, but it is time for Congressman Rush to retire.
Yeah. And coming on
the rhetoric that we heard from him this week is absolutely an example of that. We don't need that rhetoric in politics. It's time to go, no matter who's saying it. We don't need that, and it's time for Congressman Rush to retire.
Katie Kurth, telling it like it is, particularly after Bobby Rush. And I'm with you. I remember Bobby Rush from back in the day, and many interviews with Bobby Rush, but particularly after he endorsed Bill Daley in the first round. And the question I kept asking yesterday is, would he have given that speech at a Bill Daley rally? Imagine if Bill Daley were in the runoff against Lori Lightfoot. I mean, the same issue would be at stake, right?
Right.
If you think Bill Daley is the person who's going to stop police brutality, then
well,
you should...
just play just play a video of the rally and just put a little Bill Daley face on Tony Preckwinkle and see how it rolls.
All right, now before I gas you the Joe Biden question, I have to ask Erika this. You just got finished running for office. Has this deterred you from ever doing this again, or did it leave you wanting to get back in the race?
Absolutely not. It was a really great experience. I had such a talented team, and we had so many volunteers, and I was really proud of the race that I ran. We didn't do the mudslinging. I mean, we certainly called the current alderman out on the money that he took and the votes that he took, but we didn't. We ran a campaign that I can bring back to my students and say, I'm proud of this. And as all of this is happening in our city too, our kids are watching. I mean, they see these commercials on TV. They're hearing the news, and I think that's so important to remember. As it's a campaign, but it's so much more important to make sure that you leave that campaign being proud of the work, being proud of the issues that you elevated. Mm-hmm. And I'm really proud of the campaign that I ran, and I'm also really proud of Marianne's campaign too, and I'm more than happy to support her.
And Max, the whole notion of negativity working, Erika she did the Michelle Obama route. She went high when they went low. You've been watching Chicago politics for a while. You think that?
Well, Ben, I think I'm thinking about what you were talking about with the lipstick, and I think things are changing in politics. There's a generational change in who the voter blocks are and who cares. And I think that what's the most important thing for a candidate is authenticity and being a real person and not being phony. And I think that there's some candidates who are angry and it works for them to go negative, and voters, Bernie Sanders, right? This is a guy who's really fired up. He's really mad. A lot of people look at that and they're like, I feel it, right? He's real. Like, look at him. He's up there. He's yelling. He's mad like I'm mad. There's other candidates who are relentlessly positive and they want to have a different brand of politics. And if that's authentic to them, then that can work. Same goes for the lipstick and all these other issues. Like, I hope that's a change that we see in our politics, is that this whole dogma of like, was there what's the right way or the wrong way, or should you do this or that? Like, the answer is always it depends. It depends on who you are and what's at stake in the race.
Yeah. And just to add on to that really quickly, as far as the authenticity went in my race in particular, I was being my authentic self, except for, you know, how I really wanted to dress.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's something that I can feel good about, and that's something that obviously my team was very passionate about as well.
All right, Kitty Kurth, you're not leaving unless you talk about Grandpa Joe Biden. That was your
Uncle
boy. A couple.
Joe Biden.
Oh, I'm sorry. We call him Grandpa. Isn't he a grandpa as well as an uncle?
Yes, of course he's a
All right, but you don't want to accentuate the age.
He's
all
a
right.
silver fox.
All right. So, are you going to join his team this time around? I knew you were a big Joe Biden fan a few years
If
back.
I'm invited, I will join it. If he runs, I will likely join it. That said, I've been out in Iowa. We're working on some issue stuff, and honestly, I'm so excited about all the Democrats running and all the choices and all the ideas. There's an event in Storm Lake, Iowa on Saturday with 5 different candidates, like all talking about ideas that are important to rural Iowans. Like, that's good. It's good for them to have that education, the candidates themselves to learn about the issues and figure it out. But there's great candidates. I love Joe Biden. He's a wonderful man. I am not 100% convinced in my own mind that he should be the next president, but I want to hear from him, and I want to hear from Amy Klobuchar, and I want to hear from Kamala Harris, and I want to hear from Mayor Pete. You know, I want to hear from Julian Castro. I want to hear from all these guys. There's ideas out there. We've got a lot of problems. We need a lot of ideas, and to my opinion, the more the merrier. Plus, it means all the young Democratic operatives get jobs.
All right,
so I'm
that's
really
good too.
happy.
And let's hope they don't advise Joe Biden to take away his ruby red lipstick.
To take away his authenticity.
The
But
equivalent
coming
thereof.
back, you know, one of the reasons people like Joe Biden is because he's authentic. One of the reasons why people liked John McCain is because he was authentic. Are they the same? No, but they were each authentic to themselves. I think even like John Boehner, the former Speaker of the House, even if you didn't disagree with him, you had to kind of like that John Boehner was always going to tell you what he thought, and he wasn't going to bullshit you.
Mm-hmm. All right, that is Kitty Kurth, and she's feeling the podcast vibe of this show as well.
Well, he already dropped the F-bomb.
Yeah, so
I
it's
can
all
say
good.
shit.
Yes, you can, and you have, and you will, and we're going to get you back to talk about
podcast.
We're going to be talking. The April 2nd madness will be over on April 2nd, of course, and we'll be talking a lot about the upcoming Democratic primary and all the candidates running. So I want to thank Kitty
Hey, Ben,
Kurth.
can I plug an event? Is that cool? When does this come out?
Absolutely.
When's this out?
Well, first of all, it's streaming live as we speak.
It's live?
So your F-bomb has been heard by thousands of billions of people. But then the official download is in about an hour. So go ahead.
Oh, great. All right.
Plug.
This Thursday night, I'm going to be at IO Comedy Theater with Marianne Lalonde doing a little comedy show for the race. So if you want to hear from her and see some great comedy and meet me, I'll be there. Come and
you do stand up.
Give her. Well, we do like comedy and improv and stuff. Yeah, we have our monthly Cards Against Humanity show.
I
Yeah,
did not know you
come
personally.
do a show with us.
I should come to. I did not know you personally got up on stage.
Yeah,
I did not know
come
you
and do a
you
show
got
with
up-
us. It's fun. Come and co-host with me.
Oh, okay.
It'll be fun.
Let's do it, man.
Yeah, but come out on. Are you looking up the time?
Get time.
Kitty's
and-
frantically tapping on her phone. You'll find it on her website, Marianne Lalonde IO. Google it. You'll figure it out.
Thursday. The day.
Yeah, Thursday night.
Oh, tomorrow. God, I've
Yeah.
lost track of time. All right, that's Mac Temkin, Erika Wozniak, Kitty Kurth, Monroe Anderson, who was early, and of course, the man, the myth, the legend behind the board, pride and joy of Alton, Illinois. The ladies all love him for his body and mind. The great Dr. D. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. See you tomorrow, everybody.
The Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you by the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 and District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Thank you once again to those unions for jumping on board with us in this adventure. And of course, today's show is brought to you by our friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor.